Good morning. It's good to see you. This has been a great weekend. I appreciate so much the invitation to spend time with married couples. And Carla and I have just been so encouraged by the response, by the participation. But y'all about wore me out yesterday. And this after worship, there'll be my 10th lesson time. So last night I was going over my slides. And usually what I'll do is I'll take some from a previous presentation or something I've worked on, and I put them in there, then I'll start calling them out and making changes, modifications. And so I had several from a previous presentation, and I thought, I'm gonna delete those. And the next thing, so I push the delete button, and the next thing I know, I hear this brrrr, and I wake up and I look at my presentation and it's entirely gone. So I said, oh, no problem. I'll just, push the replay button, well, not the replay button, but the refresh, whatever you call it, back button. I keep pushing. I got 20 of them back, but all the rest of them were totally gone. I thought, what did I do? So anyway, but I've pretty much reconstructed it last night, but I had to tell you that story because it's never happened to me before. And if you know how to get the slides back, you let me know because I would really like to understand that process. Well, we're here today not to talk to you about a travel agency because we're not. We're here today to talk to you about a ministry that Carla and I are involved in that involves taking people to the Bible lands. It's a teaching ministry that begins with what we just call as a larger term, an umbrella term for our work called Bible Passages that involves a number of things. In training preachers, we spend part of our year at Bear Valley Bible Institute teaching there. We also are involved in a number of other works that include evangelizing the lost, and some of those things you might be familiar with that we're still working on, and creating other materials through World Video Bible School. If you don't know about Searching for Truth, it's now all available online for free. We're here today to tell you about these resources along with the Bible Lands trip. But please let others know about that as an evangelistic tool. And they also have charts available for instructional purposes in the classroom that we've created, that we've worked on, had a part of those, and that include things like Daniel chapter 2, and then again in different languages for around the world. We also are involved in just what we call equipping the saints, trying to provide resources for people to learn, to grow, to study, to fortify their faith. And so Carla does a great job with her and Kathy Pollard on a women's podcast called Looking Up. And there's information in the foyer about that and some other things. So let other people know about this work. And there's some here that can provide some good testimony about that and what they're doing. And not only that, but we do marriage seminars, obviously, from time to time. And then Carla's scripture writing program has reached, and that's an old statistic, but so many people have been encouraged by this. So please find out about that if you don't know about that program. And then the fourth sort of area that really focuses on what we're here today to talk about has to do with defending the faith and edifying the saints by providing educational opportunities, not only in terms of resources, but through travel to learn and to grow in our knowledge of God's Word. So, as a subset of Bible passages, Bible Land Passages is focused on documenting information relative to the Bible lands, documenting it and providing then a storehouse of resources and information for World Video Bible School to use, which they have in a number of different applications. If you've ever watched any of their material or seen some of the material associated occasionally with Apologetics Press and what they do at World Video Bible School for them, you'll find some of our video material that through Matt Kane and World Video Bible School we were able to capture on separate trips, on filming expeditions, but also on these tours that we lead. And so we put together an objective for this program that is surrounded around edifying members of the body of Christ, to aid believers, and to defend the faith. That's what this is all about. It's not a commercial. It's about an opportunity to grow and to study not only there, but for you as a congregation to even grow closer together as you think about traveling together. So here are some of these resources that are available. We started out with the DVDs. We still make some of those for those of you that still have DVD players, which I do. But anyway, so the Bible Land Passages documentaries, but they're more than just documentaries. They are lessons centered around the Bible lands, but to help connect people to God, to encourage them in their walk of faith. Not just facts and information, and neither are these trips. Not just facts and information, but it's about helping people to see God. And so we've got these resources. Here's another one we want to encourage you to use. We go to the Bible lands. When we go to Israel, we go up to the Temple Mount. We go around the base of the Temple Mount. We see things that I'll show you in just a moment that will help to fortify your faith. But if you can't go, and we understand not everybody's able to go, well, here are some resources that can really bring this to life. And we're doing more and more. We're moving toward, hopefully, the Lord wills, to creating a virtual experience of the Bible lands through the Oculus, and those are becoming less and less expensive now. So people can purchase them for congregations and maybe use them in their classrooms to experience the Bible land through that way. So we have a number of these videos that some of the shorter ones now that address a variety of topics. Let other people know about these. They're all free online. And we're using them as not only as a means of fortifying people's faith and of defending the Word, but also as a gateway into things like Searching for Truth and then the church overall, and in particular the works at World Video Bible School. Okay? So that's a big part of what we do, but the other part of what we do on occasions is our Bible Land Studies program, which this congregation has expressed a lot of interest in. We do have some trips planned for next year, and then 3 in the following year, and then I think we're possibly looking at, from what I'm hearing some of the men say here, is that maybe Brown Trail going in 27, doing their own particular trip with our leading it and organizing it for you. So what's involved? Why should you do it? Why should you plan on putting aside money? Because it's not cheap, but some people consider it sort of a one-time, a life event to go and to do this, and it's worth every penny. I've had people tell me, because you're going to spend around $4,000 to $5,000 a person. That includes everything. And people have told me that's the best investment they've made, and they would have paid double and triple the cost to do and experience what they got to experience, because you take it with you the rest of your life and use it in teaching and so forth. So when we go, we believe that one of the reasons that if you can go at least one time or maybe more in your life, it's good to go because it can help to make you a better Bible class teacher. So when we're there, we have everyone utilize the book Geobasics in the Land of the Bible, which is a map book that we take out to Israel. And we have also a resource guide called a Passage Guidebook with articles and information. And we kind of tailor it to each particular session that we're out there. And has lots of useful information. So you're learning and you're seeing things, for example, like the Sea of Galilee. You get to stand on Mount Arbel, which is not mentioned in the Bible by that name, but it is one of the highest mountains in the area that allows you to kind of pinpoint where things took place, and you're seeing then the surroundings, the environment where the ministry of Jesus occurred. We spend a lot of time trying to understand and appreciate this small little sliver of land that God put His people Israel in. It's called what I learned years ago from a class that I took there, that they called the land between, or this land bridge, that it's literally wedged in, Mediterranean on the west, the Arabian desert on the east, the great empires of Assyria, Babylon, and Persia and the Mesopotamia area, and Egypt down there to the southwest. And here's little Israel. It's a highway. And God said, don't form coalitions with their neighboring nations. You trust me. But just like today, Ukraine or even Israel today naturally is going to say to other countries, help us against these, invading countries. We understand that from a human perspective. So think about being in that small land, and Egypt is an oppressive nation, or maybe just even the smaller nations like Syria or the Moabites or the Edomites. Okay? And that particular theme plays out through the rest of the Old Testament. Geography, archaeology, particularly geography now, is not just about finding places on a map. It's much more than that. It's much more than that. And so we spend a lot of time understanding how God used the land to refine the faith of the people of Israel. It's a testing ground of faith. And when you're there and you understand just how small it is, and you begin to realize the resources that existed for them or didn't exist for them, or the climate that's there, it really brings it down to you in a very personal way, but it is a sort of three-dimensional approach to studying the Scripture that stays with you, and you see it, and it can transform a lot of ways, or a lot of particular passages that you look at in the Bible. Sometimes we go to remote places like this at Lachish, and we say, well, what in the world does a commode have to do with, they discovered a commode in the city gate there at Lachish. And when you go there and you find out more about that, and then you read the story of 2 Kings 14 and what happened when Jehu, maybe it was Jehu. All of a sudden I can't think. Came and they destroyed the temple at Samaria, and he put a latrine in there. What in the world was going on? Why did God have him do that? What was it all about? Is it sort of a strange thing? You read that in the text of the Bible, and then they found one in the temple or in the gate complex at Lachish, a little town southwest of Israel or of Jerusalem. And you learn about the siege that took place there by King Sennacherib of Assyria. And so you begin to, these stories that maybe are somewhat obscure in Scripture begin to really be implanted on your mind much better because you're actually seeing them. You learn things like this. Jeremiah 2:13. What did Jeremiah mean? That my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn for themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Well, you get to see and experience the actual springs, living water in the region. Living water for them was water that was moving, water that had been filtered and clean and that was pure, as opposed to, because it only has two major rainy seasons in Israel, and so when it does rain, you got to make sure you collect the water and have it to last through maybe a drought period. And so they would dig out these huge cisterns, underground caverns. Now, limestone is porous, and you put water in a limestone cistern and it just soaks through and leaks out. So they would line it with plaster that they had made from the resources available in the area. But when the earth moves, sometimes the plaster cracks, and the water then begins to drip out, and so they have to repair it. And God is saying, what you want is water that's stagnant over here, your own devices, the idols of this world, and you've forsaken me, the fountain of living waters. I mean, who would want that? But yet that's what they had done spiritually. So cisterns like this are all over the Bible lands from the ancient past. And you can crawl in some of them and experience it. And it just, again, it imprints it on your mind, and things become much more visual. And there's an example of a smaller one that's in the hill country of Judah and what it looked like underneath the ground, okay? So, passages like that. What about studying, here is this particular photograph taken in the area of the Benjamite Plateau just north of Jerusalem. Here's a man plowing in that rocky soil, and they would take those rocks and they would build walls around to hold the soil in, and terraced farming. And so imagine the story of the parable of the sower coming to life, or Isaiah chapter 5 and the vineyard, the parable of the vineyard that Isaiah tells about his beloved and how God had put them in a nice vineyard and provided everything for them, and then they brought forth wild fruits. All right? About a watchtower, what does that look like? This is a more This is a later watchtower from like the 19th century, but there are remnants of older watchtowers in these vineyards. And so you begin to make Bible connections and can illustrate them for people. So traveling in the Bible lands can help make you into a better Bible class teacher, to make the Bible real for people, to bring it alive. And then it will help to fortify your faith, because when you actually get to see where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, and you begin to put two and two together as to how manuscripts could be preserved in this dry climate, and then realize maybe why they took them out to where they did, so that we have evidence, manuscript evidence of the Old Testament with prophecies about Jesus. These are dated at some 150 years before Christ. We have confidence and a knowledge of the fact that these weren't written after the fact, like a history professor of mine said at Texas State University many years ago. The Jews had a nasty habit, she said, of dating things much older than they were and writing them after the fact. Well, here are the Dead Sea Scrolls that help us to know that the Bible was not written after the fact, that these prophecies were in place long before they occurred. Or to be able to go to the Sea of Galilee and see these places and experience them, or to walk in a synagogue that was from the first century. On our website, there is an article I wrote a while back called "A Tough Time to Be a Critic." And I cited about 3 or 4 references to people who had criticized the Bible, saying that all these references to synagogues is an anachronism. It's written after the fact, and that during the time of Jesus there were no actual places to meet. And it's true, when you go to Israel today, you find the remains of a lot of 4th, 5th century synagogues. So after the destruction of Jerusalem, and you have rabbinic Judaism that begins to become what's in place, and they build synagogues all around the north. You have a lot of those around, but for a while there wasn't any evidence of any first century synagogues. And so the critics said the Bible was just wrong, and that it was written after the fact many years later, and someone said that it was older than it really was. But then in the last 20 years, they have found some 4, possibly 5, depending on how you date it, first century synagogues. And here's one at a town called Magdala. And whether or not it's the Magdala of Mary Magdalene mentioned in Scripture, but just down below Mount Arbel, when I showed you a moment ago, looking out over the Sea of Galilee, there is this ancient synagogue, and in the middle of that synagogue they found this table. It's called a Torah reading table, and based on the coins, based on the style of architecture, and the pottery that was found there, everybody dates this to a first century synagogue. Well, think about Matthew 4:23. Jesus went about all of Galilee, preaching and teaching in their synagogues about the gospel of the kingdom. So 4:17 through 23, he's ministering in that area. So if you want to go to a place where you can say, pretty certain that Jesus was right here, you can do it. Most of the time you have to say somewhere in this area. But every once in a while you can say, yeah, I can't say this where he put his foot, but I can say that he was here. And this is one of those places. So from an archaeological perspective, fortifying your faith, do you know that up until about 20 years ago, that critics were saying that there's no archaeological evidence about David, and they were right. They said David was just a mythological character, sort of like Achilles was in Homer's Iliad, in the stories you remember, Iliad and the Odyssey, right? And he's just some mythological character that the Jews had. And for a while we didn't have any until the discovery of what's called the Tel Dan inscription. I wish we had time to talk about it, but you get to go to the place where it was discovered. You get to see the remains of an ancient altar that was probably the altar built by Jeroboam. I don't know, doesn't have an inscription there that says, I, Jeroboam, built this altar. But it's from the right time, in the right place, okay? And it's built in a very similar way from the particular style of altars that were built during that time to lend us to believe that that's probably where the golden calf was that Jeroboam erected. The point is, you see these places and you get to experience them and to write about them and to talk about them to others and to your children. You know, a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to talk to some middle school kids at a private Christian school in Texas. And I showed them a lot of the slides that are associated with the ministry of Jesus, about places that he went and so forth. And afterwards, I got back home and I got in the mail a package of letters from these kids. I know the teacher had said, look, I want you to write a thank you and say what you thought about all this. And the majority of those letters basically said the following: thank you, Mr. Moore, for coming and talking to us about the place where Jesus lived. We did not know it existed. We thought the Bible was just do's and don'ts for people to live by. They had no idea. Now, there were a few because they'd come from places associated with the church, but a lot of those kids were not associated with the church, gone to this Christian school, but did not understand that the Bible story takes place in a real geographical setting, in a real historical time of history. And so being able to learn these things, you don't have to go there to be able to show others that. I'm not saying that. But there is, I think, a value to our at least trying to make it there one time in our life if possible. And so whether it's that or archaeological evidence associated from the time of David to show, okay, not only did he exist, but he was more than just some sort of chieftain of over a nomadic tribe, like critics then began to say, because they couldn't deny the Dan Stela. Okay, all right, well, I'll get bogged down in all that. I need to move on. So traveling to the Bible lands will answer a lot of questions for you. One of the questions, how could they baptize 3,000 people on the day of Pentecost? You get to stand on the southern end of the Temple Mount and see these ancient mikvahs. Over 100 years, sometimes even older than that, before Christ came, Jews were ritualistically immersing themselves in baptistries, completely immersing themselves before they went to the synagogue, before they went up to the temple. There were baptistries all over the place on the day of Pentecost. And they had water with huge cisterns and caverns underneath the Temple Mount, and around it there was tons of water. Well, can you have tons of water? Quarts, liters? I don't know. Lots of water, right? Lots of water. And here is the remains of one of those. And they're just all over the place. It answers questions like, well, how can it be a land flowing with milk and honey? That doesn't make any sense to me, because isn't the Bible lands like that? And we address that question. And this just happens to be a small portion of the land of the Bible. You get to see that it's much more tropical to the north, that in the mountain regions it can be very lush and can be very moderate in its temperature. Also, traveling the Bible lands will encourage you beyond measure. You get to pray together, sing at the sites. I like to say this is not a vacation, even though we enjoy it in that way, but it's like a retreat on steroids. We all have congregations that will spend time going to a place and organizing the food, a place to stay and to sleep and all of that. And then we might have a lesson or two in the morning and maybe one at night. When we're on these trips, we're studying the Bible, reading, praying, being together, enjoying one another's company. It is that all day long, and it is life-changing. It's encouraging because you're with other Christians doing these things. And then traveling the Bible lands will strengthen your resolve, because when I see the magnitude of what's going on in Israel and the dominance of Judaism and Islam, because there is a huge population of Muslim people in Israel, and many of them are citizens. People don't realize that. Some of them are even a part of the Knesset. They have a party, an Islamic party that's a part of the Knesset of Israel. Important for us to know politically, by the way, what's going on today. You can drive by Bethlehem is dominated by Arabic people today that are not in the West Bank. They're in Israel proper. There are mosques scattered around modern-day Israel. People are citizens that are Muslim that live there. Now, it's true that Judaism is the dominant religion and has more control in the area than Islam does. But my point is, there's one church of Christ in all of Israel today. And that's in the city of Nazareth. In Nazareth. And there's a small group of Christians that are meeting there every week. A couple of summers that we got to stay there, we really got to know those brethren and understood more of their struggle and the trials that they face and sometimes the persecution they encounter. So, something like this puts the world in perspective that says we have a lot of work to do. A lot. And to stay into contact with brethren like the Jadans who have worked there for years in Nazareth. All right, well, what can you expect? Let's see, what time do I need to be finished? I need to make sure. What time? Okay, good. So I think we're moving along here pretty quick. I've been talking faster than I like to, but anyway. What can you expect then on these trips? A program organized, controlled, and directed by members of the church. There are a lot of people who maybe in their retirement years especially want to go to the Bible lands, and so, who do you go with? Well, there are tons of tourist organizations out there that are organizing these things, and some of them may be pretty good. But to be able to go with members of the church makes a huge, huge difference. And so that's one of the things that we're excited about to be able to provide. We do devotionals and lessons and have instruction by faithful brethren at these sites that make these Bible connections. So it's not about just going. Now you can just go and put your hands in your pockets if you want to and go, that's pretty cool, and enjoy it. But you can also go, and if you want to learn, there are great opportunities as we open up our Bible and we study, and as we're going down the road on the bus, and we're sometimes giving lectures on the bus. And now you can tune us out if you want. You don't have to listen all day to lectures, but I'm saying there's an opportunity there by faithful brethren to present these. The dependability of an on-site travel agency with many years of experience there. We work with groups there that have done this, and reputable, great hotels and all-you-can-eat buffets. Of course, that last one is important to me. That one, right, this one right there, yeah. So sometimes people wonder about, well, where do we stay? And it raises the cost a little bit, but we found that people like to know they're sleeping in a comfortable, air-conditioned room, and that they have good, clean water and potable water to drink and things like that, because that is a question that sometimes arises. Quality class instruction materials, including maps, charts, and photographs, and then first-class travel coaches. Now, I say that because, I don't know, first class is such a broad term in a way, but just meaning that it's comfortable, it's air-conditioned, Wi-Fi on the bus, so good travel conditions when you're on the bus. And we have our own bus. We travel together like that. No one else is on our bus. We keep the same bus the entirety of the trip within any particular country that we're traveling in. And then a so-called a lot of bang for your buck, I think at a fair price. We're not trying to make money on it. We just want to be able to cover the expenses and pay for people who are working in various capacities to get this done. So you might find it cheaper in some places, but be sure you always compare apples to apples, because some people will offer something, but it doesn't include the airfare, or it may not include an evening meal, or it might not include entrance fees into the sites and so forth. So it can be, I know how advertising is, and it can be a little bit deceiving and frustrating when you're reading one particular set of plans for going, and then you read somebody else's, and it just doesn't mesh in terms of the price. So be sure you compare apples to apples, okay? Now, what about some of the sites and the places? Where do we go? And what do we do? I've got down here, and afterwards, if you're interested, 4 handouts. One of them is a map of Israel and the typical route that we take and the places that we go to see on here. And then a map that includes Greece and Turkey. I didn't put Rome on here, but a lot of times we'll hit a number of sites in Rome and do Paul's missionary journeys through Turkey, Greece, or Rome, and/or all together. And then the question arises, well, what do we do each day? What's an itinerary like? Well, here's one from March 25 through April the 6th, where we went from Dan to Beersheba. And so down to hour by hour itinerary. And we stick to this. Very rarely, are not able to fulfill everything that is on here. Sometimes things happen. There may be a road out, a roadblock or something, or one year we were there in Jerusalem, and President Trump didn't bother to tell us that he was coming, and he was going to visit the Western Wall on the day that we were there. And I said, well, that's okay. I'll be glad to talk to him. And they didn't think that was a good idea. But anyway, so we had to arrange things a little differently that time, but on the fly. But having people on the ground there that you know and trust that can help you facilitate that makes then these things really come to life. So if you want to know, again, what we do on a day-to-day basis, that one's for Israel. And then here is one that we just recently did, Turkey through Greece, that gives you an idea, a lot more time on the bus. Now, the other option is one that has to do with a cruise. It's a little less intensive, a little more relaxed in some ways. There are pros and cons to each one as far as what approach you want to take. But essentially, if you're looking at a map with the 12 tribes of Israel on it today, are the main sites. The only thing I don't have is occasionally we'll go to Shiloh, which is right up there on the edge there between Manasseh and Ephraim. And, spelled wrong. And so if we would start with number 1 over there on where Dan is in Ephraim, that's where the airport is, just outside of Tel Aviv today. And on this particular trip, we spent the night there near Tel Aviv, then got up the next morning. We went up to Caesarea Philippi, number 2, and then we went over to, you can see where the Mount Carmel range is. Do you see that little, what looks like a thumb sticking out in the Mediterranean? That's Mount Carmel, the Mount Carmel range. It's a major promontory. Always look for that when you're trying to orient yourself as to where things are. And so up there, we'll take a look at Mount Carmel, where Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal. And there's also a Jewish, not cemetery, what's the other word? Underground. Catacombs, yeah, it's like a Jewish catacomb. And we learned a little bit about rabbinic Judaism, and that's very important to know and to kind of understand and appreciate, especially what's going on today with so-called modern Judaism. And then number 4 is you head over to Nazareth. Also number 5 is Megiddo, and then number 6 is Jezreel, place there. You're familiar with Ahab had a palace there, where Jezebel died, and right there in the same area where Gideon and challenged the Midianites, and Gideon's 300, where God whittled them down there, and many other things that take place in the Jezreel Valley. So we take a look at that, try to understand not only that this is the site, but why did these things take place where they did? What was occurring here? What was going on geographically to sort of set the context for the story? And then heading on up to the Sea of Galilee. Number 7 is Mount Tabor. So you get to see where Deborah and Barak marshaled their forces up there on the big top hill of Tabor. Shunem is right down below there. The story of the Shunammite woman, and then also just on the other side, the little town, the city of Nain. Remember the widow woman who had lost her only son. And so right there close to each other, which is significant in terms of why the Shunammite woman and what took place with Elijah, and then, or Elisha. All right, we'll get there. And then Jesus and the connection between the two. And then the Sea of Galilee, go to Capernaum, where Jesus made his home and his ministry there. And you see the remains of an ancient synagogue. 40 4th, 5th century, but below it, the foundation of 1st century, you see a big basalt stone that several of them that were millstones. It really brings to life the story of Luke 17 when Jesus said, sin is going to come, but woe to that person through whom it comes. It's better for a millstone to be tied about his neck and cast into the depths of the sea than for us to offend one of these little ones. Why would Jesus say that? There are millstones all around there. They were produced there and they were sold there in Capernaum. And you can understand that, oh, wow, that's a terrible thing to be thrown into a place like that. I should never do something. The consequences of sin are horrible. And then to go up to number 9 there, right up north of Naphtali, or as they say, Naphtali. And right there's a place called Hatzor, where Joshua destroyed that city and burned it to the ground in the conquest period, and make some connections there. Then on up to, do you see where it says looks like 0, but number 10 up there? There's Dan and Caesarea Philippi, and then to go to number 12 and to look out across over to the road to Damascus. You can't be on the road to Damascus. We don't know exactly where it is, but you can look out and see Lebanon and Syria from up there, and see where, on a clear day, you can see some of the antennas of where Damascus was located. All right, and then to come back down along the Jordan River, and to stop at Beit Shean 14 there, where Saul, his body was hung on the walls of that city. And then the men of Jabesh Gilead from the region of Manasseh came across there and took his body off of the wall, and they buried it. And then there's a modern Greek city there below it. I say a Greek city, an ancient Greek city below it, Scythopolis. You learn about Greek culture. The reason I say go to Israel, if you had one place to go to learn about cultures all over the world, you can go to Israel. Because they've got Egyptian culture, Babylonian culture. They've got the Persians there. We've got Israelites. You've got Canaanites. The Greeks were there. It's all there. Everybody wanted to be there for a variety of reasons and did control this area for a lot of reasons. So you can experience a number of those things. So Beit Shean, then you come down to 15, Jericho. See the remains of that. It's disappointing, but still pretty neat. All right, not much there. Number 16 is Qumran. Number 17 is Masada. That is the spring of En-Gedi, where David hid in a cave from Saul. And Saul went in there, remember? And David cut off that tassel off of his robe. I don't know which cave it is. I like to pretend that I know it is, but anyway. Don't know, but it's neat to find those caves out there and to see them. And then to go, so there's the route that we take. Go down to 18, Masada. 19 is Arad. 20 is Beersheba. And then 21, 22, and 23 is this area known as the Shephelah, the lowly foothills between the Judean hill country and the coastal region of the Philistines. And you get to understand more about why David and Goliath fought. Why did they fight? Understanding that and seeing it so that our children and all of us can understand that the Bible story takes place in a real time, in a real geographical setting, and fits with history. The Bible is accurate in every detail, and you can trust it. And to see it for yourself really, really is faith building in a lot of ways. So the Sorek Valley, where Samson was, visit the city of Beit Shemesh, and that's Israel. Okay, and there are other places you could go to if you had more time. All right, and then there's a particular itinerary that we enjoyed before. Some of these places, like landing at Istanbul, why in the world go there? Well, there's an application with regard to church history. What happened when Constantine moved the capital of Rome over there? Why do we get the Eastern Orthodox Church today? How did that happen, East and West? And so to be able to talk about those and the councils that followed and the fall of the apostasy that began to occur in Christianity, to see it at places like the Council of Ephesus that took place in 431 or 481, somewhere in there. All right. Then you can see visiting those 7 churches of Asia, going back up to the journeys of Paul. There's a lot of things that you can experience. And so planning out the itinerary that you want to go on is going to be difficult, I'm saying, because there's a lot to see and a lot to do. But whatever you choose, however you want to organize it, will be up to the congregation, I know, here. And that's the route that we took before in the steps of the Apostle Paul, although that's not the exact route that he took. But anyway, yes. Okay. Yeah, so one of the questions that sometimes arises is it safe? Is it safe? Well, right now, I wouldn't go to Israel, okay? I've got a friend that is flying over to Jordan as I speak. He's an archaeologist, and he spends time at Shiloh, and he's going over to Jordan, then he's going to cross over. And we've got a friend of ours that helps us with a lot of... he is a secular Jew that lives north of Galilee, but he helps us with a lot of our trip stuff in Rome. And he sends me texts all the time or back and forth. And the other day he's out there with his son surfing on the Sea of Galilee. I mean, so, bombs are going off over the top. I would not go there right now. But eventually, our prayer is that things will be back to normal in that sense, whatever that is. But where it will be safe, and because when we've traveled there, we feel safe. It's a modern country. They are advanced on many levels. They had led the world in nanotechnology, and I don't know if they still do or not, but for many years they did. And their security, their Iron Dome system, and all of that. So they are a first world country. The ease of travel is good, and we've always felt safe there. Really safer there than to tell you the truth, in some cities in the United States. Okay? So, but you may have more questions about that. The last thing I wanted to just show you is, if you're interested in more information about this and about some of the resources, then, let's see here. Here is our website. Okay? And notice that there are lots of opportunities to just learn, or these are mainly videos, but you can watch the temple project that I was mentioning a moment ago. And, so here is just an example of, there's not going to be any sound right now, but Matt Kane in World Video Bible School has done a tremendous job of putting together, I think, some excellent documentary-style videos that you'll find helpful in your classroom environment. So that's some of the videos, and you can see there that we have a digital model of the temple, Herod's temple, as well as the tabernacle, that you can explore and utilize, and more coming. But so under the Learn section then, the documentaries, the connection videos, there are a series of things called reflections, 4 or 5 minute sort of discussions about these places. I don't know why that's under there, Bible writing, but anyway, there are articles. So I want to encourage you to think about finding articles, if you need articles about these subjects. And then notice here, the Bible Land Tours you can go and look at what we've done in the past, and then, go to current tours. Here's and then there, if you want to see kind of what to expect now, there'll be a brochure that you can download that will explain more of kind of what we're doing. Okay? Well, I know we didn't leave any time for questions, unless is that the second bell, right? Yeah. But feel free to give us a call or talk to us after the service is over today. The main thing we would request of you is your prayers, because the tour part is really a small part of what we're trying to do overall. So please pray for us that we can make available even more resources for people to utilize that will help them in their walk of faith. Thank you so much.